I think unlicensed boxing had a bad name. I think that unlicensed boxing is pulling itself out of that doldrum, if you like. I mean, the days back in the 70s and the 80s when you've got these great big fat guys and, you know, let's all fight for the Governor Championship, etc. And to an extent that's still going on. But more and more and more unlicensed fights, they tend to have a younger type of fighter. You've got kids almost 20 years, 25 years old going in there and doing it. You've got people that are almost on the top of the game doing it. People that haven't got the time to go down the amateur route and certainly don't want to go to the professional route. And so they're taking more appearance, you know, pride over their appearance. They're making themselves fitter. And I think that with the shows themselves being run in a much better light and much more professionally handled, the whole thing, I think, has come out of that bad. You know, there is one or two shows about and fights that still happen and things that aren't regulated properly. But as long as the doctor's there, as long as you've got a good ref in there, as long as you've got good judges in there, and as just as important, you've got a good crowd, you've got a good fight.
I wouldn't say it as a bad name. No, I wouldn't say it as a bad name. I'd say since that Guy Ritchie came along and made that Snatch film, you know, that probably didn't do it any favours. So people think there's a lot of gambling going on and, you know, people throwing fights. But it's not like that. I think unlicensed boxing can get, you know, like youngsters off the street. You know, they're not fucking about with the gear or the drugs or whatever.
Too many years ago, funny enough, they used to bite and headbutt and stamp, and it was really, I think it's gone a really lot forward now. I mean, you've got all the doctors at ringside, you've got all the ring girls, Wendy and the mean girls, you know, it's all really proper outfit now.
Well, it used to be the ferocity of the fights. There used to be hardly any rules, but now, like, this last 2 years, like, it's more Queensberry. But I think people still come because they still know the reputation that it used to have, fucking stamping on the heads and all that sort of thing. But it's not allowed these days. When it was, I started about 3 years ago, two and a half years.
Yeah, about 3.
It was still a bit naughty then. I've jumped over a few people's heads in here, but they wouldn't allow it now. Totally get disqualified straight away.
Well, some people get too into it, you know. You're always going to find like these like over-passionate people, but that could often like be alcohol-fueled, couldn't it? I mean, you know, I've only ever seen security come to the ringside once or twice in London. They've handled it really well. They're very professional, their security. Like a sport like boxing, it's gladiatorial, isn't it? So it's going to fuel passion, and you know, people are going to get exuberant and overexcited, especially if they've gone all the way up there, a little team of them on a bus, on the train, in a load of cars from somewhere else, you know what I mean? And then their man's lost, you know, they've been full of the joys of spring, thinking he's going to win, he hasn't, you know, so whether they're feeling let down or what emotions are going through them, I don't know, but, you know, they do get upset now and again.
I've had an awful lot of criticism from a lot of people about unlicensed boxing. All I would say is, before they can talk about it, they've got to see it. And 9 times out of 10, they simply haven't.
my role in the whole affair is I encourage the boxers, distribute their tickets and posters to them for the southeast of England, and sometimes, as you know, Luton, Bognor, whatever. On the night, look after all the boxers, make sure that they're happy with their opponents, help out with matching the boxers, and basically just keep an eye on things where my partner can't, basically.
Boxing's booming again at the moment. Promoting's a pain in the arse. Absolute pain in the arse. I don't know why I do. You know, if I promoted for a living, I'd have been skinned years ago. I wouldn't have done it. But I love it. You know what I mean? I love the game. And you know, even tonight I was meant to fight it. People said, Joe, what are you fighting for? 44 years of age. I said, because every time I see the guys want to get in the ring, I want to get in there and do it. You know, so I promote, but it's, you know, it's a pain in the arse. The fight's pulling out on you all the time. You know, they ring you up, I've got Carl. Today's Mother's Day, we've got a show tonight at Mother's Day. Do you know, I've never known so many fellas taking their mums out for Sunday lunch. Do you know, on Sunday night, you know, it's unbelievable. Everyone today, you know, Joe, I can't make it tonight, I'll take my mum out with a milk, but hell, mate, you know, mate, you know.
Second out. Hold on, the corner's got to get out first. That's it. You're all fucking drunks. Second out, round one. The balls are 2, 3, 4, 5. He's out. Goodbye, Nigel. Rolling on his side.
I think you've got all walks of lives in the boxing game. A lot of them are boys that used to be a bit in the pub, few pints, I can have a tear up. Then you've got a lot of them that were sort of like training to be boxers, wanted to go pro or semi-pro, didn't get that break. Got a nice crowd that will follow them, and they still want to do it. With boxing, if you haven't made it by a certain age, it's very unlikely that you're going to be a semi-pro or a pro boxer. And I think they can tell by the time you're 15 or 16 nowadays, you know, if you're going to be any good. But a lot of them, obviously, if you're paying your money to go to a boxing club and you're half decent, they're not going to say to you, nah, we don't want you. They're going to still take your money and say, come on, we'll get you in the ABAs, we'll get you semi-pro, we'll get you pro. And, you know, ultimately, that's what they do. That's what they run a gym. But a lot of the boys who come to fight are boys that they just ain't going to have the opportunity of getting on the pro or the semi-pro stage.
I mean, I might not be right on this, but I think like since like the European laws have come along and all the different acts, that there's so many different, you know, like different associations with boxing. Now, it ain't like in the 70s when Ali was the champion and everyone crowded round the black and white in 1973 to watch him fight whoever, you know. it's different now. You can set up this, you can set up that. You can't get done for misrepresentation, whatever, you know. And everyone wants to steal a bit for themselves, you know, because at the end of the day, like, the amateur guys have still got money men behind them putting on the show, you know. So, you know, they're fighting for their few quid, aren't they?
Seconds out, first round.
Well, to get it right a lot, if you want to get it right. If you don't want to get it right, you just want to throw someone in with someone, then you don't do nothing, do you? You just wait until the day and go, well, here do. But to get it right, you know, we watch DVDs, I watch old fights and see if there's an old opponent that's going to fight, and I see how he fights and see if someone's suitable.
The fighters that actually perform here come from all over the place. We've got them from Wales, we've got them from the South Coast, we've had them from, we've got a guy who came down from Aberdeen today. They vary in ability, to be honest with you. I'm actually sometimes pleasantly surprised, but other times not at all. The standard of the boxing is kind of give and take, really. I mean, you get some kids who think, why, you know, he could possibly make a professional, but you get some guys that haven't got a clue. But having said that, this level of boxing isn't about being a world champion. It's about going out there and having a lot of fun.
Basically, they could be first timers, you know, i.e. the guys that haven't got a clue about fighting. I mean, the promoters don't always know. They get a phone call and the guy will tell them he's done this, he's done that. A lot of the time, they're lying, you know, and they just get up there and they're crap, like, you know.
Apparently, there's this man called Kevin, Dave the Sensation, you know what I mean, and Thompson. I'd never heard of him before, you know what I mean, and then so he comes up and. They tell me I'm gonna fight him. I looked him up anyway, I had no video, nothing about him. I asked everyone, no one has ever heard of him before. He's from Scotland, you know what I mean? I looked through the internet, Dave Thompson, the Sensation, nothing about him. And I was kind of in the dark, you know, and I thought it was gonna be some secret weapon from Scotland. So I trained really, really hard for this fight, you know. I trained really, really, really hard. And when the night came, you know, when I saw him, my first look at him, I was like, is this the Sensation, you know what I mean? He didn't look like someone who did a lot of training, you know. He was a bit chubby and all that, but you don't judge a book by his cover, you know. And I said, all right, let's see what happens in the ring, you know.
First round.
you that one of the main, in fact, the main objective of any referee is to ensure the safety of the boxer.
I mean, that was embarrassing. I mean, he told the promoter he'd box for the Commonwealth Games and this and that, and he just didn't really try. I mean, I'd be embarrassed to fight someone like that. It doesn't make Joe Kazc look good. He puts a lot of hard work in. It doesn't make him look good.
No, you get all different sorts of fights. You get a couple of handbag fights maybe.
Tell us, what's a handbag fight?
Well, a handbag fight's where the boys, they can throw punches, but they're used to throwing punches in crowds. So you ain't got to worry about hitting no one, because if you're in a crowd, you just throw punches and you hit them. Whereas a proper boxer now, he'll pick his punches and then pick his target. So it's a complete different level of boxing. But on the night, I don't know, if you were saying to me on average, how many fights do I think would be good? I would say out 15, 12, 13. And you'll have two funny fights. And the two funny fights could be that the two fellas are just two different kind of boxers and they just can't seem to hit each other.
Round one!
A big fight for me, a memorable one, was Joe Kazc and Sven Hamer. That was really memorable, and you know, I was proud of Sven because no matter what Joe done, he was hitting Sven with all his best shots, but Sven just kept coming forward.
He was the governor, the title I do hold now, so I've probably been the governor for 10 years and no one had beaten him. And he does his record of knocking people out and all that. He's an ex-pro with quite a good record, and big stocky fella, you know. And I trained for him, and I was ready. So I was ready to go the distance with him, you know what I mean. The fight was quite a challenge, to be honest. We did 5-3 minutes. You know what I mean. He didn't expect me to be what I was, you know what I mean. Because when the bell went off, I caught him a few punches. I shook him, you know. And he was very, very unprepared. He had 3 belts, and the 3 belts were, one was a Joe Pyle belt, and he had a governor belt, and then he had another EBF belt. So I took the 3 belts off him because he put them on the line of the night. So from nowhere, I had myself 3 belts, and there I was, the governor. Being the governor, you kind of inherit the bad boy underground title that these tough men did hold back in the day. And Sven Hamer had that title for 10 years. You know, I mean, everyone who tried to beat him failed. I mean, he either knocked them out, stopped them, and that's what happened. And overnight, suddenly I was the governor, and I was like, oh, I didn't know, you know, because if I was going to lose anyway, you know, I mean, he never heard of me, and he thought he was going to go through his motions, but he came to fight, you know what I mean, but I beat him. Yeah.
You know, he didn't knock him out. He might have beat him, but he didn't knock him out, and it was a good fight. Sven was the champion, I think, for about 8 years at that stage. And being a champion for so long, it's easy to become complacent in the sense of, you know, no one ain't come forward that is a real challenge, you know, and all of a sudden you got another challenger. And, you know, you just ain't turned your switch on completely. You know, you've only given it sort of like 50, 60% of what you should have done. If you'd sort of like, I don't know, trained to his usual standard of training, he could have well easier beat Joe.